like 5 years, and then they would redraft.
Good afternoon. It's June 3rd, 1 p.m., and this is the regular meeting of the Hayden Safety Commission, and it's now in session. As note, this meeting, unlike others, is being recorded. So can I have a roll call, please?
Vice Chair Harrison?
Here.
Commissioner Meesom?
Here.
Chair Spencer?
Here.
And David Hagar is absent. We
Okay.
have a quorum.
Will you join me for the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, are there any additions or corrections to the agenda? No, Lisa, we're good? Okay. Consent calendar, approval of the,
You do public comment first. I don't know, maybe it's not.
no, that's not until later. That'll be after. So did everybody have a chance to look at the minutes of the March 4th meeting? Any corrections? Brian, you see anything different?
No.
Okay, Raleigh, any corrections to the minutes?
No, not here.
Okay. So if there's no actions and corrections, I'll get a motion for approval of the March 4th minutes, Public Safety Commission.
I'll move that we approve the minutes.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Okay, minutes are approved. Public comment.
Well, yeah, I'd just like to say thank you for sharing your expertise with the city of Hayden.
Sandy, you're gonna have to go up now, sorry.
Hi, I'm Councilwoman White, and I just want to say thank you so much for sharing your expertise with the city of Hayden and the people here. We appreciate you. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, unfinished business, action items. We were each sent a copy of the, I guess, the last draft of the Measure What Matters document. Pete, have you had a chance to take a look at that? I do have one question for Lisa. This is a draft that's going to be presented to the city council, correct?
Yeah, the idea would be that the council would, or that the body here would recommend to council whether or not you would ask them to adopt it as part of a resolution guiding not only the Public Safety Commission, but also law enforcement and the way that we address
Right.
law enforcement in the city of Hayden.
Okay.
Go ahead.
The draft that I have is an earlier draft, and it hopefully has been amended because it indicates that we're going to provide the school resource officers with training in that, but I think that's been taken over by the school district. Is that correct?
I believe that contract expires this month. So if that didn't get updated, I will go back and find it.
So that'd be under prevention. I guess that's B. But we'd strike that.
The question I do have, which is probably academic at this point, is did you have any idea in terms of implementation steps, who would be implementing this?
Well, I think that's the kind of course that would be what the future would tell us, right? So if some of that initiation some of it might be here, some of it might be at the sheriff's office, some of it might be at the council level. But what it does is it honors, I think, the purpose of where we're going.
Okay, I think that would tie into our recommendation for the liaison.
I believe that with respect to the liaison, I believe the directive to council was a recommendation that they try to prioritize funding that. So I don't know that this necessarily addresses that.
Okay, all right. Well, I don't have any issues with at least the goal of this, of measuring. Captain Smart, do you have anything?
No, I do not. I think your question might have been more of who is the one who's kind of the spearhead of this document moving forward? And I think that would be the liaison along with the city manager of saying,
Right.
let's sit down with this quarterly or whatever and ensure that we're meeting the goals that we've laid out in it.
Okay, yeah, I would think that he or she would be a key pivot person to implement this and bring in whatever resources they needed. So, Brian, have anything to add to this?
No, I think it's a good starting point for, use this word somewhat lightly, I guess, a guiding light for policing in Hayden. So I think it's a good document and
Okay.
lays out some good foundations.
Do you have any recommendations for approval of the Measure What's Mattered document that would be presented to the city council?
Only that we just cleaned up the language reference to the,
You may not have the latest copy.
No, I found where it is referenced in there. So I will correct that.
Correct that as ordered. All right, okay. We have a motion.
Do you need the motion?
I need a motion
approve
to approve this, right?
Well, I think
With
the
the
idea behind
corrections.
that would be that if you think it's ready for recommendation to council for adoption, you could make the
motion.
motion to recommend it to council for consideration of adoption via resolution. Like,
Does the motion need to include anything about modifying the SRO portion?
Yeah, I think you could make that notation that staff would correct it.
Yeah, with that modification.
So I move to approve the document, Measure What Matters, to recommendation to city council with the modification of the SRO portion.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. All right. Okay, next item on the agenda, actually, I'm to review the law enforcement reports and make recommendations to city council. And we were each sent 4 copies. And this was done from January through April. Has everybody had a chance to take a look at those?
And you may not have a recommendation. We put that in there so that if
Right.
you are going to take action on them, that you have, kind of within the framework of the area on the agenda, you have a direction that you could take if you wish, but at this point, the mayor and I have been working with the sheriff's office to try to drill down, and I believe received a phone call or an email regarding maybe some different ways of looking at the response times, and we had already addressed that question with the sheriff's office and feel like we're getting, kind of narrowing that in, trying to getting a more realistic look at what that response time is when it's a call for service by somebody other than an officer being initiated, so.
So this is just information only then?
Yeah, at this point, if there's no need to make any recommendations or changes, you can just accept the reports. And council does get them every month as well.
And this report was mainly developed and designed for public consumption. I think that's why we have it in this format.
It does go on our website,
Right.
and it goes to
Right.
council as well. And once a month, the sheriff's office generally is available to come do a report on law enforcement, and it makes himself available to the council to answer any questions. So again, kind of getting at that community policing level of being seen and the public hearing from law enforcement, we're
Okay.
ready to meet that
Any
requirement.
comments or suggestions? Wally?
Nothing, looks like they spent a lot of time on dogs and cats. That's separate from a criminal deputy, that you have a unit that does that, right?
Yeah, well, animal control, we do have animal control officers on, but when they are not available, then it reverts to the deputies handling those. So pretty much from 5 o'clock on till the next morning at 6, the deputies are handling those.
Just seems like there's a lot of them.
Yep, it's a huge driving force is animal issues.
Yeah, it looks like assaults and thefts seem to be running the highest numbers, and everything else seems to be fairly flat. So,
These thefts, they would cover the stuff of shoplifting.
Most of them are going to be Super One and Hayden Walmart.
Right.
right,
As long as we don't have burglaries of residents and auto theft,
They would be specifically outlined on there. The
as long as we don't have
separate
those, we're in good shape.
categories.
I'll just say I appreciate the revisions to the stat sheet, and it looks like there's a lot of deputies out there being proactive.
it's, and, you know, I think for the city of Hayden, we do still have good statistics, knock on wood. Okay, if there's nothing else on 3B, we'll move on to new business. Okay, action item, review the draft fiscal year 2026 law enforcement master contract and make recommendations to the city council. So is there a way, I think everybody got a copy of this. I'm not sure Raleigh did. You got
I got one, I've already stumbled onto something here.
it? Okay, go ahead.
So it appears, in reading this, that the mayor's decided to go ahead with this lieutenant position. Is that correct?
It's a recommendation. Right, within this.
In the contract.
Yep.
This is as a result of the recommendation by this body to council to try to fund the position. And so in response to that, in order to fund the position, we need to include it in the contract.
How many lieutenants does the sheriff's office have?
9, maybe 8. I'd have to. You talking about total department or just the operations side?
Well, not jail. I should have excluded that, or criminal investigation, or civil process. But
Okay,
for your patrol deputies,
there's 3 in patrol right now.
okay, the total number of deputies on the road today.
There's approximately 70 sworn spots of sergeants and deputies.
Okay, got all of them full?
Well, there's 1 vacancy, I believe, right now. They'll be filled in a week. But again, there's about 10 that are in the training program or some form thereof.
So they're not on the street yet. I don't know. I've expressed it before, and I'm going to say it again. That I think it's a lot of cost. And the supervision's going to be basically over 2 guys on duty at a time. I mean, somebody's going to make their plan of what we want them to do. And that would be an in-house decision. And then it has to be agreed on by the sheriff, if that's something that he wants his people to do. But it just seems to me like we're top-heavy.
Well, I'm thinking of more in the line of personally looking down the road, at which time that at some point we will probably need more deputies. And I think this person is going to be a pivotal person, if nothing else, for coordinating between, as a liaison between the city and the sheriff's department. So how is the cost stacking up? Is this doable?
I believe that it is. I think what will be interesting is our next level of conversation will be with the county commissioners or the liaison to the BOCC on whether we can strike a deal to get us there. I'm happy to talk about the purpose of the lieutenant position. I guess I just made the assumption that that was already a position that the group had settled on and the council had they had made that request to
Right,
council.
we did. We approved that going
So
forward.
this is staff acting on that behalf, so.
Right.
Where is the money going to come from out of the budget?
You, I guess,
You only have so much that you're allowed to go up annually, correct?
Mr. Chairman, do you want me to move to the next item?
Yeah.
Or do you want to stay on this one? Because we talk about that in the next item. Maybe I could back up and just kind of lay out the contract.
Yeah, just
the way
kind
I've-
of, if you
the
kind
way
of
I've
give
got
a
it.
summary layout of,
The way I have it built right now is we would enter into a master agreement with the sheriff's office that theoretically wouldn't change year to year unless there's changes that happen with the contract, as what's happened this year. With the removal of the SRO position and that being a strong component of the previous contract, the one that we're currently operating under, and the opportunity to add the command level staff, we needed to change the master contract. But going forward, the master contract theoretically wouldn't be changed, and the supplemental agreement each year would be negotiated, which would include the areas of cost associated with the functions of the contract. So in this case, and what we've done previously is we've looked at our labor staff, or labor costs, our supplemental costs for capital, and then potentially any other line items that could come forward in the future that we need to maybe put in there as well. So the supplemental agreement would be the tool that we would negotiate each year, not the master contract. So when you ask the question about can we afford it, that's really the supplemental contract, which we have on the agenda next.
right,
Which, if you'd like to open up that subject, we could. I just want to make sure that if there's still a need to have a conversation around the contract, I want to make sure that we're not intertwining the two right now for sake of a motion,
right.
but for a conversation, it might be worthwhile.
Brian, what do you think? Anything changes?
I think that the contract is very well written. I know that it's going to be a big pill to swallow, but I think having that lieutenant there in a leadership role and a liaison role is going to be important, just to see that things go the way that citizens of Hayden expect them to go, and kind of build that relationship between Hayden and the sheriff's office, and between the sheriff's office and the deputies that are representing or policing Hayden and the community in which they're policing. The only thing that's not in the contract that I would be curious to know how that works, and maybe it's in one of the supplementals and I missed it, is just that if there's a failure to provide that manpower that's stipulated, what happens then?
Yeah.
So if we're saying, hey, we're gonna have a lieutenant in 8 positions and there's vacancies that aren't filled, and so for 12 months out of the year, we're not getting what we're paying for, so to speak, what happens in that case?
We've had several conversations with the sheriff's office over that, and what we are paying for as part of our relationship with them is in what we call an enhanced service. So in the event that you'd have either an officer gone because they're sick or on FMLA or injured or on vacation, that, essentially the service would go back to sort of that pre-service amount that we would have experienced had we not had the contract, right? And then, in the event that you can't get an officer to fill that position, that's a conversation that's iterative, right? So we're sitting down with them monthly trying to figure out how we're going to meet the expectations of the community. But it would operate very similarly in my mind as our own department would operate, where when you have an officer who's gone for a long time and you're trying to fill that position, there's going to be probably long-term, potentially, times where, you're leaning on the base of the sheriff's office to help make sure calls for service are happening, but they may not be happening like they would have if we had a full staff. One thing I didn't mention, and I'll hand it over to Captain Smart, you can maybe explain a little bit more, is the other area of discussion that we had was creating our kind of quasi police department within the sheriff's office, and Exhibit 1 does attempt to make that visual for all of us, as well as the citizens, to know this is who our department is. And as I mentioned to the sheriff's office or to the sheriff, I'll repeat to this group, you got to have leadership in order to have a department. You don't hire a patrol deputy and say, go patrol. You hire, a police chief that develops a department. And I'm not a police chief, and I don't want to be a police chief. And I think I've said that now for 18 months. So not having leadership in this role is one of the struggles that we hear at the community level. And as much as we chase ourselves around that circle, the answer is bringing leadership in. I don't know if you have anything else to say.
I was just going to go back to, I think the contract is laid out of, there won't be any backfilling of positions for people who are gone on FMLA, sick leave, vacations, trainings. But if we got to a point where it's a significant thing beyond something of that, we would definitely be sitting down and refilling that with somebody else as part of the contract obligation. We wouldn't leave that as just a vacant position saying, we don't want to give you a body right now. That would have to come down to our staffing at the sheriff's office would drop so far down to a point where we couldn't sustain either, or then we would have to bring that to the table to discuss. We aren't able to we aren't able to get that position filled. Then I think we'd have to open up the conversations again about what that looks like of some sort of a, do we owe you a refund, or are you eating that, or what that is? But just in general, though, the other parts of the daily routines of that deputy in that position, they don't get backfilled for a dedicated person.
Yeah.
But they will get the same amount of calls for service will be handled. We'll still be dropping in and completing those. We won't pen stuff
Yeah.
and say, oh, we're waiting for someone to return from Hayden. We will still handle those as they come up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's what I would expect if an officer's out, or a deputy, sorry, is out on training or FMLA or injured or whatever the case might be, that calls for service are still be handled, that maybe we're just, as a city of Hayden, maybe we're losing out on a little bit of that proactive patrol, but that's just the nature of the game. My concern would be more so if staffing levels at the sheriff's office were at the point where you're waiting for a deputy to, complete the academy, complete FTO, hit the road, and then be able to capture a deputy to come back over to backfill, where you're having months on end, per se, with dipping below what the contract calls for. What does that look like, I guess, was my question, more so than the FMLA or the vacation
Okay.
type of thing.
And right, and at that point, we'd have to have a further discussion on what's the length of time on that, and, are we able to fill it quickly, slowly, and would there be some sort of a return on your investment?
Because it sounds to me like staffing levels have improved, but I think there's been, my perception is that multiple times throughout the years that these contracts have been in place, we've maybe dipped pretty far below what we were hoping for in the contract.
Well, since 2 years ago, when we started this one with Mayor Purcell, we have not had that where we have not had a position that was left open. We have filled all of them.
I was gonna say, that hasn't been my experience
it's
since
not.
I've been here, but
Now, yes, anecdotally, could it? Yes. Has there, over the course of years of agencies doing contract cities, could there be an opening that somebody has not filled over time? Yes, but not with us, since we started going down this road of the dedicated with the new contract system.
Okay. I must have misunderstood. I thought at one of our last meetings, there was talk of there being 7 deputies assigned to Hayden.
Well, there's actually 8 right now that we have dedicated to Hayden, and they've been filled.
Okay.
yeah, I did want to just point out that, and I realize there's a grammatical error I need to correct after I read it, the F3 on page 4 does have the assignment of non-dedicated deputies. It's that acknowledgement, not specifically to long-term, that's something like Captain Smart was saying, we'll need to work on, like, if we're paying for that and it's 9 months out of the year that position isn't filled, then yeah, are we owed maybe a cost savings? We'll certainly have to look at that, but it does say that they have the ability to use non-dedicated deputies to maintain coverage, and that they shall from time to time backfill those positions as deputies leave the agency or transfer. But I hear what you're saying, and I think it might be something we talk about.
Well, I think we need to move forward on the contract. And unless there's some major changes to it, I'd like to entertain a motion that we approve this draft to be forwarded
You'd
to.
be recommending, just so
Recommending,
you know.
right.
And I don't know if that's something if that's considered major enough for us to have to go back and add that language in regarding sort of the long-term contractual obligations, but
I think that it's something, again, in the motion, you could say, with some sort of verbiage alluding to the fact of long-term vacancy to be visited between the sheriff's office and the city. we have something similar to that in our school resource officer contract that has just it's like a one-sentence clause that states if there's going to be an extended absence, again, a little bit subjective, we don't have it labeled of what that time frame is. I think we're all trying to use common sense on that.
Right.
Hypothetically, a guy, motorcycle accident, breaks his leg, and it's gonna be like 6 to 8 months of recovery. That'd be something we need to sit down and discuss. Hey, we have the ability to refill that right now, or we can't because of staffing issues. That would be something to bring to the table. So we can certainly put a 1 or 2 line clause in there about an extended absence that we ensure that we have discussions on what we're doing with them.
I would think extended might be in excess of what FMLA allows.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, where would we put that, Lisa?
I would probably add it to that collaboration of resources section.
Okay,
I've taken notes so I can add that. I mean,
can
and
add that in?
realistically, we could come back before you guys again with a revision of this, but we'd probably want to meet interimly
Yeah.
between now and our next meeting.
I would like to keep this moving forward rather than not.
And just so you know, none of our attorneys have reviewed this yet, so this is just where myself and the sheriff's office have gotten in our conversations of shepherding along to this meeting. It's the first time it's gone public is to look here today, so
Okay.
our attorneys haven't reviewed it. They've reviewed it for concept flow, like how it's set up, does it make sense, is there any issues with that, but not content yet, so.
So I suggest then that we move forward with this contract with the stipulation of adding the clause for long-term vacancies and how that would be handled between the KCSO and the city. If we put that in, I don't think we need to have another meeting unless upon legal review, you think that's necessary.
I think once it goes to legal, we're outside of concepts and we're into verbiage, so
Okay.
I don't know that we would come back for
Okay.
that unless you guys felt that it was substantial, but for content, for
Right.
structure, you guys might find that to be something you want to revisit. I'm looking to you guys, I don't know
Sure.
that I really want to drive
What do
that
you
ship.
think? You want to see it again?
Yeah, because I'm not comfortable with it the way it is right now.
I would need to know more about what that means then.
Yeah, so what's the,
I won't be making a motion. Nor will I be seconding.
I guess at this point, Raleigh, it would be really helpful to hear what areas you have concerns with. So if we go back and bring you back a new version, what would it need to look like in your mind?
Well, I haven't been able to get all the way through this. Unfortunately, I didn't get this. I didn't know that it was on this platform. And therefore, I didn't see the contract till I sat down. So that's negligence on my part, and I'll happily resign from this if that would make everybody happy. But I'm just not gonna go ahead. I don't know where the money's coming from. Well, I know where it's coming from. It's coming from us taxpayers, but I don't know what you've done in the budget to be able to go up the amount of money that we're gonna have to go
I
up.
guess, do we want to backburn this decision and go to the supplemental, and I can present how, where we're at right now and how we're proposing to the sheriffs and the BOCC on how we're going to fund it?
would you like to see that? Yeah, I think it'd be a good idea.
I'm a happy camper.
If I could just say one thing on this real quick. So, Raleigh, I think that there's a balancing act to be had between our role as a commission for being respectful of taxpayer dollars versus our role to advise city council on recommendations. Obviously, we're all taxpayers. I appreciate that. I'm as frugal as the next guy. While I certainly wouldn't want to come up with grandiose ideas and present them to council as this is the greatest thing since sliced bread and know that there's no way to fund it, I think that we need to balance that out versus, hey, we think this is the right thing for policing in Hayden, and not at the risk of sounding like I'm passing the buck. That is someone else's kind of role to figure out how that fits into the finances. And if it doesn't fit, it doesn't fit. But, and I get it. I think at the last commission meeting, I was talking about the funding and, well, where's this going to come from? So I think that's a valid concern, but I think the bigger question is, as the contract reads, the financial side apart, because we're already committed to a large financial expenditure. As the contract reads, does it make sense as it reads? Does it make sense for the citizens of Hayden? Does it make sense for the city? Do we agree with the content that's in there? And then,
Well, I think we're going to get way off the subject. It's probably not good. But when this was presented to the public for the levy, it was 10 deputies, correct?
Well, the total would be 10.
Yeah.
We had
that-
6. We had
So they
6.
said, okay, we're going to pony up
Right.
to pay for all this. It's changed drastically since then. And then you're coming along and you want to load a couple of $100,000 more in it. So at this point, I won't be motioning, I won't be seconding.
okay.
Okay.
So
Okay. I have a tendency to agree with Brian's recommendation, and so I would like to make a motion that with these changes that we move forward and we get this presented to the city council. Do I have a second?
What changes? Sorry, we got
Adding
lost in
the
conversation there.
clause for long-term vacancy and how that's resolved between the sheriff's office and the city.
Do you want to define that long-term vacancy or leave it?
What's a recommendation for long-term vacancy?
My recommendation would be anything beyond 12 weeks, because 12 weeks is FMLA.
All right, then we'll put in the 12 weeks. Good.
I was already heading down that path anyway, so.
Okay,
It would just essentially add, I think, at this point, a tentative section, is it 2, sorry. Is it 2F6, which would, be a paragraph discussing long-term vacancies and extended absences relative to revisiting with the sheriff's office about cost allocation or cost reimbursement.
yeah, so 12 weeks, that'd make sense, be something specific in there, so,
I have to work with the sheriff's office as well as potentially our attorney on how I'd write that language, but it would definitely meet that essence of what you're suggesting. And I guess I'm just looking to Captain Smart to make sure he doesn't have any major pushback on that.
No, I think you said it. It's a conversation between the sheriff's office and city about how we fill that position or look at some sort of financial compensation.
I think I think we both agree. It's a good add.
okay, all right,
So with that motion, I'll second.
okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Carries. Will you, when you finish that, will you all send out a copy for this on the final one and highlight the changes for us? Okay, where are we here? The next is, do we need to
So the
then,
next is just to give you guys where we're at right now in discussions with the sheriff's office over price, and make sure you're aware of what that looks like and the potential implications of the conversation, like the what ifs. What if we don't agree? Where do we see that being? And you'll see it's the supplemental contract, and on the second page of that supplemental contract is a table that I put together. This is the table that on my wall in my office, and I talked to the sheriff about this last week when we met with them, but essentially the proposal this year, in talking with the sheriff's office over our last 2 years of making significant headway in replacing the vehicles that we have purchased, it's the opinion of the sheriff's office that we can maybe cut back to one of those vehicles.
right,
So that extra capital cost, rather than throwing it back into the general fund, we rolled it up into labor. So labor saw an increase of 95,000, and contracts went down half by 50%. So overall, right now, the proposal is a net neutral for the year, but long-term, we see that labor costs remain in the budget. That includes what the mayor and I presented to the sheriff last week, which is the delta between the loss of the SRO position and the gaining of the lieutenant position, plus an additional 4% on top of that, which would help cover any cost increases that they're having to their labor relative to benefit increases, insurance increases, et cetera. So we feel it's a strong offer. We're hoping to present to the BOCC the same offer. It's their opinion. I don't want to speak for the sheriff's office, and I can certainly hand it over to the mic to Kevin. But I know that there's some maybe disagreements about the way the math is working this next year, and they want to see us kind of come up a little bit more. And so there might be a compromise in some cases, and we don't know exactly what that compromise will be yet. We might know more after we talk with the BOCC. But if you look at the table there, you'll see overall the number of deputies where they've changed, the percentage of change, and you see that big change happening in 2004 or 24, excuse me. And then you'll see last year we made a 6% increase, and then this year it'd be 0 if approved by both parties. And we really have 3 parties, right? We have the city council, the sheriff's office, and the Board of County Commissioners. So that's where we're at right now. So it's a net neutral. If we can get that, it wouldn't be an impact financially to our budget this year. Next year, we would have to look at what that potential increase would be if we are going to add deputies. But I'm hoping that with the help of a lieutenant and having command level staff present on behalf of Hayden at the sheriff's office, we'll really start to build what I think is that future model of what policing looks like in Hayden.
Okay. So what would you like from the commission on this?
Just, I think at this point, it's just giving you guys an update on where we're at. If you feel like there needs to be a motion on anything, you certainly could take that, but I'm not necessarily, I don't even think I suggested a motion on this one, so.
Okay.
It's just giving you kind of where we sit, how we're paying for it. I know that's obviously a big concern for some at the dais, and I want to make sure you understand that we're doing our best on behalf of the citizens of Hayden to produce what we think is the best service for the least cost to them, but recognizing that we're, being reasonable with that with the sheriff and the BOCC. We don't know exactly where that's going to land yet.
So when do you think this would be presented to the city council?
At this point, it would be as part of the final adoption of the budget.
Okay.
We would present that. So, and iteratively along the way, we'd be letting them know of impacts or changes. I do have currently a budget for the general fund, which has a surplus right now of $23. I consider that balanced.
What is the maximum that you went up? I mean, you can only go up, what is it, 3%?
It's roughly $78,000.
Say $80,000 you were able to increase from last year.
Correct. And then that's not inclusive of our new construction. New construction, we're still waiting to hear about that. That right now is estimated at about $45,000 that we'll get in new construction dollars. But with those new construction dollars comes, a lot of services alongside of that. We have new streets to maintain. We have new routes to plow. We've got new policing that has to happen. So that representative cost doesn't necessarily equal the commensurate level cost of service to bring them all those things. So.
Okay. Any other discussion on either items 4A or 4B? Okay, seeing as such, I don't believe we have any reports. Do we have any reports from the
I don't know if you
committee?
had any reports.
Only if you had any questions on the 4 months of stats that you have in front of you. Again, that's what we're.
What's your assessment of Hayden? What do you, on the broader picture, first 4 months, what do you, how?
Are you talking about like crime?
Yeah,
trends and
crime,
stuff?
general feeling.
I think the reports would indicate that things are relatively flat. There hasn't been spikes that we've seen that have caused concerns. There's definitely a couple areas that we spend more time than others. In any area in the county, traffic complaints are a number one thing that are out there that citizens complain about probably the most. And so that's just attempting to make sure that we do what we can to get in some of those areas as frequently as possible. As in all things, a citizen calls in about a traffic complaint and then they expect you there for the next 365 days of the year. Well, that doesn't happen because there's also every other neighborhood who wants the same thing. So We try to strategically, you know, a couple days here, a couple days here, a couple days here, and then loop back around to see if we've had any sort of progress made on reducing speeds. We do have a single speed trailer that, you know, we try to set up here and there. Again, but it's kind of fighting amongst all the other complaints in the county as well. But, you know, we do try to implement that and put it up in place to get people's attention, and then loop back around again to do some enforcement work to see if we've made any headway on reducing speeding in the areas. So those are the things that drive the biggest parts of it. You know, Honeysuckle Beach will start to pick up here with probably more calls for service. Most of that will probably be parking issues as opposed to anything severely impactful of people crimes, but we do get our fair share of suspicious people calls down there, or, you know, anybody with a camera gets called in frequently because, you know, people attribute that to taking pictures of young kids and stuff, and so we do have to go down and investigate about what's going on with some of those things. But
Are you getting pretty good cooperation from Walmart and Super One?
oh yeah, you know, the thing about Walmart that, you know, it's irritating about all Walmarts is they really, not there to truly curb habits. They're about just maintaining, you know, they're a big box store who they let quite a bit of stuff slide and not worry about. And so they don't follow through on some of the actionable charges that you maybe want to do. That's just their stance on what they want to see prosecuted and not prosecuted. They're willing to allow some product to go out the door and just take the hit on the other side to the consumers who have to go in and raise costs.
Have you noticed any increase in drug activity in parking lots in both
I wouldn't
places?
say increase, it's there. It's,
Okay.
you know, it's, I won't, you know, again, frequent, subjective term, is it, you know, daily, weekly? Sure, yeah, it's weekly there for sure. And again, as time permits, we do have quite a few guys, especially our late PM to graveyard units. They're frequently in these parking lots a lot, just driving up and down the, you know, the stalls and the drive portions and checking for people who are just, you know, sleeping in cars. And is that a product of a transient lifestyle or a mental health issue or a drug issue or a product of all? But, you know, they're making contact with those people frequently to find out, hey, what's going on? Is it a hard times thing or is it a drug thing? You know,
Do you get any calls from citizens noticing anything, you know, see something, do something kind of?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. You know, there's a handful of those, you know, during the week where people will say, hey, I just saw this in the parking lot. You know, some of those are ones that we're able to get there and take some action on, but, you know, there's a lot of them too that are gone before we get a chance to get there.
Okay.
That's just the product of the drive time to get there before people leave and they're gone.
Okay. Yeah, well, I think the report format is easily consumable by the citizens of Hayden, so I'm glad we have it in that format. Okay, any other discussion on reports? You got anything?
Just very brief. The other section on the arrest stat, is that predominantly like warrant arrests? On the, like the top right column where it's,
Oh, other arrests?
yeah.
Well, that's just going to cover everything, domestics, well, anything other than the two that are there, the DUI and the drugs. So, yeah, I haven't broken it down to find out what's leading the way on that.
Okay, no
but
problem.
yeah, you know, in my mind, it's just going to be mostly the domestics, batteries, you know, whatever else is out there that we.
Seems like it stays around 50, 60 and spikes up to 70. But, and I wonder, is that warrants issued also is included in those arrests, is that correct?
Warrant arrests, yes,
Yeah.
would be in there.
So, yeah, in other words, if you had a warrant squad that went out and effected arrest, that would show on this tabulation.
That would be the far right-hand column at the top right-hand column of other arrests.
And the others. I don't know.
Okay. Moving on to item 6, agenda items for upcoming meetings. I do have a question for the board or commission here. Do we need to meet more often than just once every 3 months. Is there any advantage?
I don't know, we're kind of hurt today because David didn't make it.
Yeah, yeah.
And he's got a vast amount of experience that would be helpful to us right here in this local area, you know.
Yeah.
So-
Sometimes I feel like we're
Well,
3 months is a long time.
we're not getting much done.
Not, right, exactly.
But maybe that's intentional. Maybe that's all they want. You know? It's fine.
Ryan, you got any thoughts on that?
I think if we see that there's projects on the horizon or tasks on the horizon that need extra attention, I wouldn't see a problem with orchestrating a more frequent, meeting.
Yeah, we can always do
But I
ad
don't
hoc.
know that-
Yeah, right, but, okay,
If there's not a,
that much
Yeah,
demanding.
if there's not a substantial to-do list,
Okay,
Yeah, the big issue, the big push this last 3 months has been working through contract discussions. And had we been meeting monthly, I'm not sure we'd be any differently where we're at now. Maybe we would have had the one paragraph figured out, but we do appreciate staff, the lift that it takes to get some things, some legs underneath them can take several months sometimes. So,
And if they're gonna video these now, we're just adding to the cost.
that's true.
The city and the taxpayer.
Okay.
We have a pretty large crowd today.
Sandy always shows up. so
I know.
That's good, that's good. Okay, I don't have anything for right the moment on agenda items. Anything else for the good of the order?
I guess it'd just be helpful to know when we meet in the next 3 months, October,
Yeah,
what do you want staff to be working on outside of the contract and budget? Is there anything in particular?
no, it'd be interesting to see what the, we do this at the direction of the city council, trying to solve their issues or answer their questions. So it'll be interesting after this is presented to see what.
Sure. So maybe
comes to the
October,
top.
we give you a recap of what occurred
Yeah.
over the last few months relative to budget. And fill you in, maybe we'll have a new lieutenant to
Okay,
bring forward for
We'll
you
see.
guys, but
All right.
there's nothing else that comes to mind that you'd want to see us?
okay, we'll play that by ear. It's all right, if there's nothing else.
I'll make a motion that we adjourn.
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay, meeting's adjourned.
Good deal.
Thank you, sir.